Good morning, everyone. Wow, we just had an incredible month of outreach around our world. If you are new to Forest Park, let me just update you a little bit on what I'm talking about. A few weeks ago, we had a team leave from Forest Park, and they went to Uganda, Africa. Spent about 3 weeks there in loving kids and adults and educators and just reaching people there, working hand in hand with Watoto Church and some incredible people there in Uganda. And Lana, my wife, who you just met a few minutes ago, led the team there to Uganda, and they had an incredible 3 weeks there. Just unbelievable. We're going to let you see some of the pictures in a little bit, let you hear from a couple people who were on the trip. And when they returned, they were only here about a week, and then we took a large team with us and headed out to Ecuador. And this is our 18th year going to Ecuador. And yeah, that's right. In 2001, I was an associate pastor at a church, and a letter came across my desk and said, hey, we're going to be, another church was going to Ecuador, doing some outreach into the schools and into the streets and the churches there in Guayaquil, Ecuador, which is about 4 million, 5 million people, and said, we're going to be going on this trip. Would your church like to go? And again, I was an associate, so I couldn't make all the decisions there, whether or not we would go or not. So I carried the letter to Lana, and I said, hey, there's a trip going to Ecuador this coming summer, and I thought either you or I, would get on board. We had 3 small children at the time. And Lana, if you know her, said, well, I'm not going to let you go by yourself. We either I'm going to go or we'll both go. And I was like, well, let's both go. So we ended up going to Ecuador in 2001, and we have not missed a summer since. And we moved here at the end of 2001 and took our first team here from Forest Park there. And it has been an incredible series of events have unfolded, and we have just seen incredible things happen. We have a school outreach team that goes into about 20 different schools throughout the week. And those of you who've been with us before know exactly what I'm talking about. Those of you who have not been there, they just basically close the school down and bring all the students out to where we are. And for about an hour, we have the attention of all the students and also all of the teachers, and we're able to just love and dispense peace and grace and prayer and encouragement to the students, and listen to many of their needs through translators, and then pray with the students, pray with the teachers at times, give some gifts to the teachers before we leave, paper, pencils, erasers, whatever it is we have. Many of you donate those items, and we're able to give them. So it's just incredible. We also have a medical team that reaches lots of people. You'll see some of that in a minute. We'll talk about that in detail. And then we have a construction team, and they've been putting in water purifying systems. So it's just been an incredible trip. So some of you sitting in this room today, you've never been on an outreach trip like that before, and you're sitting going, wow, why did I come today? I'm just a guest here today. It's my first time. Why did I choose today? You chose today because next July, you're going to be with us on that plane. Okay, that's why you're here today. Okay, now you say, oh no, I'm not, and you are exactly the one that will probably be on that plane next July. I've heard that over and over and over again throughout the 18 years. People say, there's no way I'm going to go and do something like that. You have no idea what might happen, what might unfold over this next year. So today's an unusual day in that we're just kind of pressing pause on the series, pressing pause on the traditional, teaching, preaching that I typically bring, and we're just going to let you listen to some of the people who made these trips a reality. Say, Scott, why do you do that? Why do you take prime time on a Sunday morning? Why do you take 2 services, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock service, and dedicate all of that to letting other people get up and speak and letting us see pictures and things? Because a long time ago, Lana and I determined that we did not want outreach to other countries and to other cultures to be something that was just on the peripheral, something that we would just say, oh yeah, we have things like that too, we do. I think we have a team that goes to this country or that country. No. I wanted to be front and center. I want you guys to know about it. I want you to hear about it. And I want you to also know, and we've experienced that over the last 4 weeks with different speakers coming, Brad and Davin and Jason and Shane, which they did a great job if you were here over the last few weeks as they filled in for me where I were gone. I'm not the only person who can dispense bread, okay, to you. Man shall not live by bread alone, right? But by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Well, I'm not the only one who can throw that out. There's other people here at Forest Park who God's doing incredible things in their life and through their life. And I want to pause and say, listen to some of them. Listen to what God's doing in their life. Listen to how incredible things are happening. And these 4 guys who were here over the last few weeks, you heard from them. And I want you to hear from some of the people here today. Okay? So I'm going to reintroduce Lana to you because she led the team to Uganda and did an incredible job. So Lana, come on up here. This was her 5th time, I believe, in the last 2 years, I believe it is, 3 years, that she has been to Uganda. So I want you to listen to her heart.
We typically had done our trip to Uganda in the fall, and this year I decided to move it to June to give some of our teachers who had asked to be able to be a part of that trip, that would give them the margin to be able to come. And so we were able to move it to June, and throughout those 3 weeks while we were there, we were able to accomplish some incredible things with the educators with Watoto. For those of you who are not familiar with that organization, it is a nonprofit that was started 34 years ago to meet the needs of children and vulnerable women in Uganda. The missionaries wanted to establish an English-speaking church, which that in of itself is an amazing story. But what's so incredible is that their church was, their downtown campus is the former basic prison holding cell of the infamous Idi Amin. And so to now know that there is an English-speaking church in a place that there was so much pain is incredible. So the whole experience to Uganda is just altogether other. And I could talk to you about it for hours. But I want to allow Doug Wardwell to come up and speak about his experience. He is one of those teachers that had the opportunity to go with us, and he will be able to share with you how he was impacted and why he chose to be a part of this. Our trip for Africa next year will happen in the fall, so we don't have those dates yet specifically. But if you have ever thought about being a part of that type of experience, go ahead and start saving your money for that, because it is, I always tell folks that have gone to Ecuador, it is like night and day different. There are 2 totally different experiences. And so if you would like to expand your world outreach view, I would love to take you with us. Again, I'd like to introduce Mr. Doug Wardwell.
You know, when I first thought about going to Africa, and we had some meetings, they asked us, they said, you got to ask yourself, why do you want to go? And I said, I need perspective. To be honest with you and be very transparent, this last year made me very cynical, very depressed and very angry about a lot of things around me. And I just needed to get out of this utopian bubble of America and just see something different. And I got it. Of all the things that we did, there was one encounter I had, because we had a lot of amazing experiences. I had this fear of getting sick. I mean, we had to take pills for malaria the whole time we were there and before and after. And I was just fearing that the whole time I was going to get sick at some point. So we encountered, that was me at the Gulu church. They asked me to get up and play guitar, and it was fantastic. I couldn't understand hardly a word they said, but I had an amazing time, and I got to rock out with them. And they do songs very similar to what we do. But we went to Baby Watoto in Gulu, which is about 6 hours north of Kampala, so it was quite a bus ride. But we went to Baby Watoto, and Lana had some things she was working on in the leadership, so we went to Baby Watoto, and there happened to be one boy there. He caught my attention. I don't know why, but he did. And the girl that was there working with him, her name was Caitlin. She was from the United Kingdom. And I said, what's wrong with this boy? She said, well, he was abandoned yesterday at a church. It wasn't the Watoto church, but it was a church very near there. And what had happened was he was very sick. He was almost dead, really, technically. And whoever abandoned him outside of a church very near, during their service, because they figured that when the people came out, somebody would pick him up, take him home, get him help or whatever. And his name was Daniel. I found out later on. And when they brought him to baby Watoto, what had happened is the pastor of the church had found him laying outside the church on a blanket. When they took him to baby Watoto, he could barely lift his hand. He was so sick. He was so malnourished. And I said, oh my gosh. And I said, what's he sick with? He has malaria. And I'm thinking, that's the very thing I've been so paranoid about getting the whole time, and this kid has it. He was born and raised here, and he's got malaria. So I don't know what, but it just caught my heart. So I got to make sure I stay in 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So I asked her a lot of questions, and I just couldn't get off of the subject of this boy. So I walked around with him a little bit. He was very weak. You could tell he was malnourished, and I thought, he could die. This kid, he may not make it. So the story goes on to where he was within about 4 hours of needing a feeding tube. And after we left Gulu, I stayed up with Caitlin. I messaged her and I said, how is he doing? And she said, well, he's taken a turn for the worse. So they have to send him down to Kampala. And that was the picture when I first met him. He doesn't look weak, but he really was terribly weak at that point. So they sent him down to Kampala to get a blood transfusion and to get medication to help him combat this malaria, because he had taken a turn for the worse. So while he was down in Kampala, they had to put a feeding tube in him and give him a blood transfusion while he was there. And so every time I would ask her, I'd say, how's Daniel doing? How's Daniel doing? She'd send me video clips, pictures of him. And I think there's one in there, Josh, of him where he actually started to get better. And he was up and he was playing around. He was riding on the little bicycles they had there. And the last I had spoken to her, I asked her, I said, can you just tell me, yeah, it's so cute, this kid, he's giggling. See, he had a feeding tube in his... So I asked Caitlin, I said, what will happen to him? So, well, he'll be sent back to Kampala. They'll put an ad in the paper. If nobody responds, they'll turn him over to baby Watoto. And not to give a plug for Watoto, but when I got there and I saw what they did, these people do an amazing job. They may not rescue every single person in the world over there, but what they do with the people they have is fantastic. I'm bought and sold on what they do over there. So if you have any questions about what Watoto's all about, they do an amazing job with what they do. But that was just something that caught a hold of my heart. I couldn't let it go. I came back and told Brenda about it. I said, I don't know what it is. I just can't get this kid out of my head. I mean, he had malaria, the very thing I was so afraid of getting. So I just kept up. Now, I probably won't be able to find out any more about him. She's obviously gone back to the UK now, and he's probably inside the system of Watoto, but maybe there'll be a chance I can find out how he's doing. But he will technically stay there until he graduates from high school if he stays in that system, and then we'll make sure he's well taken care of. So I just wanted to share that experience with you. It was amazing. If you think about going on world missions, it's a great way to step outside yourself, see the world from a different set of eyes, get out of this utopian bubble of America, and see that we don't know what it's like to grow up in chaos or brutality. And a lot of their stories that we heard when we were over there, it just made you either angry or cry. But, you know, we have it made, guys. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Doug referred to Watoto Church, Baby Watoto, etc. It's a ministry there in Kampala. They also have a church in Gulu as well. And it would probably blow your mind if you were actually able to see what they're doing and how they are reaching people. There are thousands of people attending this church. Not hundreds, but thousands of people attending this church. They have about 4 services every Sunday to accommodate all the people. And what blew me away is that they struggle, obviously, with income. The people who would make up the church, they don't make a lot of money. We're talking about dollars, okay, where we would bring home a paycheck, you know, of ever how much you bring home. They might bring home, you know, $10 that week, okay? I mean, literally, very, very challenging for them. But they have a goal of raising $1 million in their church. And one of the main reasons, this was a couple years ago, as Lana was sharing with me, the main reason they have to raise that money is to plant a church in Japan. Isn't it amazing how they have an outreach to other countries? That's their heart. They want to do what they can to help other countries, and here they are in such need. So it's just a phenomenal thing what they're doing there. And I'd like for those who went to Uganda to just stand. If you're here in this service, just stand. If you were on that trip to Uganda, we have 2 right here. Anybody else I can't see across? Let's give them a big hand. Thank you, ladies. Thank you all. You can be seated. Just an unbelievable trip. If you would like more information about that, please see Lana. Email her, lana@fplive.org. She'll be more than happy to give you all the information as the dates come available, etc. We'll make sure you stay in the loop about what's going on. All right, we're going to bring up several people from our Ecuador trip. I'll call them up in just a moment, individual. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have 3 smaller teams that make up the large team going to Ecuador. We have an outreach team that goes into schools, and then we have a medical team, which they were fantastic. Unbelievable this year. They broke records for the amount of people they were able to see and the medication that they were able to dispense. We'll give you some details about that in just a moment. And then also a water purifying system. They actually build these systems that purify water for people. And it's just unbelievable. So I don't want to take any of the thunder away from some of those who might be coming to share. Okay, so first up, I want George to come. Come on up here, George. Give George a big hand. Those of you who know George, maybe you've attended here at Forest Park for a while. George has actually been here at Forest Park for 116 years now. And no, George has been here for, how many years have you been here? 16. 16? Yeah. 16 years. So he came about the second year Lana and I were here. We've done everything we can to get rid of him. We've tried to pass him off to other people, and he always keeps coming back. But we love George. George, this was George's second year with us in Ecuador, and he just does a fantastic job. Here's a guy that just jumps in to do whatever it is you need him to do, and he will leave it all on the field. He pours it all out to do his absolute best to serve.
Thank you, Pastor. I first want to start off by thanking everyone that made both the trips possible. I could not have done it without this church family. You folks poured into me so I could go, and I want to thank you all. You know who you are, and I appreciate every one of you, and it'll never be forgotten. I also want to thank the leadership team. Folks, on these trips, it's just awesome how when you get there as a missionary, it's all put together. Even when a change has to happen, it's like automatic. You really don't know about it. So I do want to thank the leadership team. It's just awesome. Now, the whole thing behind my talk is I hope to encourage someone that may have doubts. See, I was the type of person until about 2015, I was against these trips, totally against them. I was like, why spend that kind of money to send people across, and when we could just send them that? How much would that be? And I was sort of cynical, to use a word that Doug used. And I would tell people, if that's your passion, go for it, run with it. But anyway, I don't need them. Lisa Meads would speak to me about the trips, and other people would. Well, finally one day, Lori Monahan, who went to Uganda, and I'm going to tell you, this is a lady that just don't give accolades or say this is good or shed tears for just any reason. She's a lot like my wife. Well, she stood up here and she talked about that trip, and something just hit me and said, this may be real. So here comes 2017. And Lisa's encouraging me, people are encouraging me, Pastor, and they said, hey, let's go. And I started thinking, okay, if the money comes, maybe I'll go. And it started coming in. The miracles were happening. And I'm a type of person that listens to all kinds of music, and different music speaks to me. But there's an old rock and roll song, remember I'm old, by Bruce Springsteen entitled Human Touch. And I listened to them words, and I was like, okay, maybe, that's what's needed. Maybe just a human touch. Well, that really rung true when about the first year in 2018, there was a little girl there. We went into this one school. I don't think this girl was much older than 6 years old. But I was just able to embrace that little girl, and I did not want to leave. Matter of fact, Miss Lana said, George, we have to leave. And I got on that bus, and that's rang in there, that human touch. That touch meant something. And folks, it's just like us. You know, everybody can come to you and say, hey, you know, we text you, we hope you're doing better. Hey, we text you, we hope you're doing well. But there's nothing like that eye-to-eye contact when somebody will come and bring you in and hug you and tell you that they love you. And that just rang such a clear bell to me. So now 2019 comes along. And the same thing, people started giving, and I was being blessed. And I was still questioning, okay, Lord, what now? What now? Well, then there was another old rock and roll song by a group called REM called, about everybody hurts. And I listened to that song. And that song started burning in me. And yes, but the main goal was to hang on, to hang on. Well, this year when we went to Ecuador, we were able to go into a prison. And we were able to walk up to a young man. I don't know, I think that young man was like 16 years old. He was in prison for 8 years because he wanted to impress daddy by selling drugs. He was hoping for good behavior that he could get out earlier. But he had a goal. He said, I want to be a pilot. Was very fortunate to have a translator right there that said all this. He said, I want to be a pilot. I have a goal. And it was like that song came to my mind, and I encouraged him to hold on. Hold on. Keep doing what you're doing. Do your best to get that early release and reach your goal. And it just really hit me hard, them two things that I'll always remember. I know they came out of a rock and roll song, but what can I say? That's the way it was. And then finally, the verse of scripture that came to my mind was there's an incident in the Bible about the lady that took the expensive perfume and poured it all over Jesus' feet. And even Judas, who betrayed Jesus, said, man, why are you doing this? You could use that money for something else. But Jesus knew what was happening. And folks, I'm telling you that the trip makes a difference. That human touch, that giving them folks hope, eye to eye, and hugging them makes a difference. And then finally, I do want to say these. These are things that just really touched me. Number one, we went to a church service there. It was outside. It was all set up. Music was going great. The power went out. But folks, guess what? The people kept praising. They kept worshiping. They kept hanging in there. And folks, we had church. And it was just something that was amazing to partake, that we are so thankful for these lights and the music. And if the air ain't working right, we say, this sucks, let's get out of here. But it happens. And folks, the teamwork, every team supported each other. Yes, I was part of the student ministry team. I'm biased towards that, but every team mattered. And we encouraged one another. And finally, this is one last thing, is I want to say the biggest blessing I got was to see something I'm passionate about. And that's serving students. It's to see students give their all in reality. They're true. They gave it physically. They gave it emotionally. They gave it spiritually. And they laid it all out in the field, as Pastor said, to something else that I'm passionate about. That was to other students. So I ask that you give a hand to our students, and I thank you.
Thank you, George. Speaking of our students, I want Chloe to come. Chloe Jensen, this is her first year on this team, and I have a feeling it will not be her last time on this team. And she's one of our students, did a fantastic job, and I want you to listen to Chloe share a little bit of her heart. I know you could take a long time because you have a lot to share, but just listen to what she has to say.
So last year, I was sitting in this very auditorium watching the Ecuador recap service, and I was one of those people that was like, I'm not going on this trip. Like, I am not the kind of person that could go overseas. And I was sitting in here, and something just hit me, and I was bawling. And I knew right then and there that I had to be on the plane. So It didn't feel real. And finally, the time came where we were actually going to Ecuador, and I was like, hold up, I'm going to Ecuador? I cannot fathom the fact that like we actually went. It's just still processing. But we got down there, and I remember I was crying in the airport as soon as we got to Raleigh, and then I was crying in Miami, and I was crying in Guayaquil, and I was crying on the bus ride to the hotel. I just could not stop crying, and we hadn't even gotten to like the good stuff yet. So we get to the schools on Monday, and I remember it was just like devastating to see just how sad like these buildings were. Everywhere had barbed wire and broken glass bottles on top of the building. I was just in shock, like disbelief. And I didn't really feel anything until the last school of the day. And we saw this little girl, and she was suffering a lot of abuse at home, but she was one of the sweetest people in the whole world. And it just really crushed me to see this little, like, 8-year-old girl going through all this stuff. And we're so bitter as Americans, I feel like. And this girl was so just full of love. And I wish that in America we could just spread that kind of love. My heart was just overflowing. Okay, I have a paper because I figured that I would get emotional and forget what I was saying, so. This trip just really taught me how much good there is in my life, and it taught me the importance of giving back, and I stand amazed at the mountains that God moved for me that week. The people that I met did way more for me than I ever did for them, and we go on these trips thinking it's not about me, but that week is full of so many miracles, and it totally changes your life. And there's so much for me to say, but just overall, I'm thankful for this whole trip. Every single day we were there, I just thanked God that I was actually in Ecuador. I cried a lot, I laughed a ton, and we danced. My heart was just overflowing. I grew closer relationships with everyone there, and I experienced a world that was completely different than anything I could ever imagine. I was just so inexplicably thankful. And I will be on that plane in 2020 to change more lives.
Awesome. Perfect. I'd like to say that both George and Chloe were on the school teams, school outreach teams, and we're going to bring up Megan Smale. Come on up. Give her a big hand. Megan was also on our school outreach teams as well, and this was her first year going with us, one of our students here at Forest Park, and doing a fantastic job, not just on the team, but also here at Forest Park, serving in a lot of different areas that you might not see, but she's behind the scenes doing a fantastic job.
Hello, I'm Megan. So I've been going to Forest Park for about 5 or 6 years now, and ever since I first got here, I came the summer before 6th grade. So the team was just getting back from Ecuador, and I saw the Ecuador recap, and I said, I'm going on that trip, 100%. But of course, you can't go into your first year of high school. Well, freshman year came, and I couldn't go because of financial stuff. And then sophomore year came, and I couldn't go again. And then this year, I finally got to go. And it wasn't real to me because every year I'd been like, oh yeah, I'm going, woo, and then it didn't happen. And so finally this year, we actually got on the plane, and I was like, wait a second. I'm actually going to Ecuador this year. And it was my first time ever flying, ever in my life, so it was a little scary, but it was also really fun. And it was an amazing time. And basically, I went on the trip understanding that here in America, we're really, really privileged, and we have a ton here. But what I didn't understand when I went on the trip is how poor that we are in love and contentment with everything that we have here. Just going to the church on Sunday there and seeing how much love they showed. They just give you a hug out of nowhere and absolutely didn't know me at all, and they were just so loving and caring, and they were just so happy with everything that they had been given in life, even if it was so much less than we have here, and that was just a beautiful thing to see. And then I was also worried when I first decided that I was going to go on the trip because I'm a type A personality, so I like things my way. So we went on the trip, and I was kind of nervous. I was a little iffy about it, but eventually when we got home, I realized that as we had gone along the trip, I had started to live more in the moment, and when I was living more in the moment, I was happier with what was happening. I could get along with what was going wrong, and it didn't bother me as much, and that was amazing for me. And the most impactful thing on the trip for me was when we went to the prison. So we went to all the schools, and on Friday, we went to a prison, and we preached to 35 inmates there. And we got the chance to pray with them, and we prayed with one of these boys. And this boy was 16 years old, and that's when it really hit me. This boy was the same age that I am, and he's sitting here in a prison because of the family that he was born into. He was born into an abusive family who abused him, and he eventually got into a group that did drugs, and he couldn't get out of it. And so eventually he was caught doing drugs, and he was sent to prison, and here he is. And we started talking to him, and eventually we left, and the translator that we had been with talked to us, and she goes, he told me at the end that we changed his heart and that we had made him happy. And that made me cry so hard, because the whole week I had felt like what we were doing was so insignificant, because we're there for an hour at each of these schools, and what can we do in an hour? But this boy told us that we had changed his heart and changed the way that he thought about life, and that was amazing. And yeah, I will most definitely be on the trip next year, and if not, then that's going to be a very sad time for me.
Let's give her a hand. It's great. Folks, let me tell you, just they represent the students who were with us on the trip. Parents, I'm talking to you, okay? I don't know of a better investment you can make in your teenager than to get them on an outreach trip like this in the summer, okay? Here's what I've learned, okay? And I have 3 kids, 20-year-old, 22, 25-year-old. All 3 of them have been with us on the Ecuador trip. Evan is actually in Colombia today. He's flying home tomorrow. He led a team from his church into Colombia. Folks, listen, your kids are going to spend money anyway in the summer, right? So I don't know if we can afford that. We rarely say that when it comes to movies. We rarely say that when it comes to Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO, all the different. We rarely say that when it comes to sports, because we somehow find the money to pay for uniforms, travel, hotels, all the different things that we have to purchase. We rarely say that when it comes to buying the upgrades, you know, and the trucks and the cars and the vacations we take, and on it goes. The food we spend. Think about all the stuff we have. This is not a guilt trip. Well, I feel guilty. Well, you know, that's not my heart is to make you feel guilty. It's to just kind of shake a little bit and go, hey, you know, that's true. We probably will spend a lot of money over the summer. We probably will spend a lot of money this year on things that after it's done, it's done. Like you eat it, it's gone. You see a movie, it's gone. But I'm telling you what, I don't know of a better thing you could do for your kids in the middle of summer than they get them involved in something that they meet people around the world. They learn some new language, a little bit at least. They experience different people. They listen to stories. Their spiritual lives are stretched. Their intellectual lives are stretched. Their social lives are stretched. We had students, we had adults, never flown before. This is the first time they've ever been on a plane. Think about how much different, and I think I didn't ask them if I could say this, but I think I'm safe to say, because of the experience that I've had over the years, I would say they would agree that they're different today than they were 2 weeks ago, okay? You say, what, can a week do that? Absolutely it can. Absolutely it can. Okay, so I don't know of a better thing you could do. Now, if your student doesn't want to go, I'm not saying you make them. We've had that too. I've had parents tell me, we can't do anything for our daughter, so we're sending her to Ecuador with you. You know, I'm like, well, it's not magic. You know, we're not going to fix it all. But it's an incredible investment into the lives of your kids. It's an investment into your own life, okay? So just think about that and watch what God will do with the week, because I've seen incredible things happen. All right? All right. We've got Jody and Chris Huggins. You guys come on up. Give them a big hand. This is their first time with us to Ecuador. And if you've seen her, I don't know, but Jody sings on our band, and she's up here a few times singing. And they're just now really connecting into the church, and they heard about the trip and decided to go. Both of you guys on the medical team, is that right? They are both serving on our medical team. So go ahead. Talk to us.
See how that happens. My name's Chris. My lovely wife, Jody. As you can see, that picture was before we left. That was at the airport. But the smile on our face before we left was probably what we didn't expect was that smile was still going to be there when we got back. I have a couple things I can share with you. Again, 3 to 4 minutes. On our very first day, we were part of the medical team. Both her and I have a medical background. We showed up at our site for the first day, and we were kind of sitting around. We had packed all of our stuff up every time to go out to our sites. On the bus, we get to where we're at, we unpack it, we set up our clinic, and we do work all day. So we were waiting to unpack the bus, the very first stop, very first day for us, as well as for many people. And in the gutter, believe it or not, we were outside of a church, but in the gutter was just one piece of paper. I wish I would have brought it with me. I wasn't expecting to speak about it, but God's on my heart today. So this piece of paper was actually a ripped out page of a Bible, everything in it in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. I don't read Spanish either. So as I pick it up, I was kind of drawn to it over there. I pick it up, I look at it, I'm like, this is interesting. Deuteronomy 10:18 was what it started with. I looked at it briefly, didn't really think anything of it. I thought, all right, I'll look at this later. So I got back to the hotel room later on that night, pulled it out of my pocket, and I thought, I'm going to take a look at this. I'm going to read it. I'm going to figure out what's on it. Of course, not in Spanish, so I had to pull up my trusty Bible app. Deuteronomy 10:18 talks specifically, it goes into, he shows love to the foreigners living among you and gives them food and clothing. So you too must show to love foreigners, for yourselves were once foreigners in your own land. Wow. The first day, y'all. The first day, this one piece of paper in a gutter, trashed, laying out there for everyone to see. And I was drawn to it, and it spoke to me. It spoke to me all week. And one of the biggest things I learned from that as the week went on, some of the other things, again, we don't speak Spanish, but we were able to throughout the week. We were able to communicate with people normally not able to communicate with us. And the one thing that kept ringing true in my head and in my heart that I know God put there, that had no other place, no other influence, was that if you're a foreigner, some of you first time here in the church, we've only been going to the church since December. That's how new we are here. You're going to be a foreigner everywhere you're at. There's always a first time for everything. And when you feel like you don't have a voice, when you feel like you can't communicate, understand that Jesus will communicate for you. It's so easy. It's as easy as looking down in the gutter and seeing a torn piece of paper, and that piece of paper is going to speak for you. It's going to be your voice. And that was weighing on me all week, and it just it made amazing things happen. It made my heart change. It made our lives change. Hopefully, we changed the lives of other people while we were there. And if you're sitting in the audience today, if you're doubting, if you're wondering what we did, wondering whether or not that can be you, I throw it back to our music set earlier. That right there, that symbol, that little global, the T-shirts that we're wearing, this is a move. It's happening, and it's happening every single year. We didn't think we were going to go. When Lana spoke about it in January, I think it was, for the first time, we were just like you guys sitting in the audience, and she leans over to me and she goes, I'm going. I don't care if you can't go. I'm going. Okay, right? How do I argue with that? And here we are talking to you guys afterwards because we both went. We made that jump. We made it happen. You guys made it happen. And it was fantastic. And we hope to see some of y'all on that plane next year. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, guys. I know I gave them, you keep hearing, trying to stay within the time limit. I know each of them could talk 15 minutes easy, and maybe more than that. George would go all day probably, but they have stories of impact, stories of people they met, experiences they had. On and on it goes. And, you'll probably hear more about that as the year unfolds and getting to know. I tell you, we're going to bring up our last couple in a second, but one of the things that I love about a trip like this is the amount of time you get to spend with each other. I would say within that week, you probably spend more time with some of the people on the team in that 1 week than you will an entire year at church, because we come in and we leave so quickly. We don't really hang. We don't really stay around. But there, you're eating with them, you're on the bus with them, you're praying with them, you're working with them, you're crying with them. You're there all week long, and it's just an incredible opportunity to get to know people and connect and serve together. All right, our last couple we're going to bring up is Shannon and Bob Natoli. Let's give them a big hand. I probably didn't say their name the last name right. It's got to be Natoli, right? It's got to have that Italian kind of sound to it. Yeah, they're Italian all the way, 100%. But anyway. No. You need to keep the mic. We'll let Bob just stand there and cheer you on. We'll be here all day.
So, yeah, I just wrote some notes because I knew I'd forget. But first of all, when Chloe said that she cried all the time, she actually cried all the time. And she made everybody else cry all the time, too. It was a really good experience. This was our first mission trip. We've been coming to the church for the last year. And kind of decided at the last minute that we were going to go. And so thankful that we did. But being there for the first time together, it was different seeing, especially the students for the first time. Like it was a whole different experience, seeing it through their eyes. And you know, really when Scott says that every kid should go, Like, you know, my kid asked for a Louis Vuitton purse, and we're like, we just got back from somewhere that people didn't have shoes. So let's start with shoes. So I really didn't know what to say about today, about our experience, because there's so many different unique experiences in that. I was on the medical team. Bob was he was on the construction team with the water purification systems. And I think as humans, we focus on our downfalls or our shortcomings. And people that had been there before really had to remind me that, you know, I'm an ER nurse, and it's not like the ER, like the doors have to close at some point. You know, I was like, Josh, let's see 700 people today. And he's like, okay, we'll try. And I think that was the day that we saw like 670 or something. So we almost got there. But we saw like 2,100 people. Yeah. And just to see what we just take for granted. And the thing that really weighed on my heart, and I was kind of thinking last night, I was working, and I was like, you know, what am I going to say? So many different experiences that everybody's going to, you know, say what their experiences were. But what really weighed on my heart and what I really wanted to share today is like after the Texas and Ohio mass shootings yesterday, how we live in a place that's filled with hate and evil and racism and judgment, that it was so nice to go somewhere for 8 days that we were in a different world of love and compassion and acceptance, and you know, just they were compassionate and appreciative for anything that we, you know, could provide to them. So if it's on your heart and you know you're here for the first time and you say, oh well, you know, those people sound a little crazy, but they might have something, you know, then just come, because it's people like you that see it for the first time that really feel that change. And the people that have been there for 18 years and, you know, 10 years, 5 years, they were a lot of support for us. You know, they kind of kept us grounded and reminded us to, you know, focus on what we were doing over there and the difference that we made. So, do you have anything you want to say? Sorry, Scott.
Hey,
That's
y'all.
all right. Go ahead.
So Scott knows I'll talk a little bit because
That's all right.
I like
Go
talking
ahead.
a little bit. But we did 5 water treatments.
Yeah.
We did 3 in schools, and we did 2 in churches. And anytime you can give back to anybody, it's a good thing. If it's your neighbor, or you can't go to Ecuador, you can still, if someone's in need, do it. Because it'll do more for you than it does for them. But we're lucky that we were born in this country, and we didn't have a choice. They don't have a choice. And it was good to go help them, but it was amazing. We got some water treatments down there. They've been doing it for 5 years now, the water treatment, and they're going to just keep giving water, good clean water. The last day we did one in a little school, and it was the only time I'd ever seen in the back of the school there was a bunch of plants lined up about 50 yards, and And this lady was walking back and forth, watering them with a little bucket, each one back and forth. And it was our last day. And so when we got ready to pack up and leave, we had this long hose with a nozzle on the end. And Charles, who's awesome, and he was our leader of our water treatment, he gave the hose and the nozzle to this lady that was just watering these plants. And it was incredible that it was our last day at that particular location. It could have been coincidence, but I think it's just, God is good, life is wild. Have fun. Take care of your neighbor.
Go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing, that Jason Butrell, he was there for the first time too. And the first day that they put in the water purification system, they were at a school. And he told this story in devotion, and that's why I want to share it, because it touched all of us. But there was this little girl, and they had put in the water purification system, and there was this little girl. If you go on Facebook, you'll see the picture. But she goes up to the water purification system with this plant that died 3 years ago, and just looked so hopeful right at Jason, like, this is going to save my plant. So, and he was talking about just how, to hold hope and to, always be hopeful. And so, anyway.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're gonna close in just a moment with a video that we put together, montage of pictures and different things like that. Before we do that, I just want to say the water systems that were put in, I believe this year, you guys can correct me if I'm inaccurate, I believe it was our 40th water system that we put in this year. And that's 40 different water systems right now in Ecuador that we've been able to put in that are still operating, still giving out fresh water. And that's going to give literally thousands of gallons of clean water into communities and churches and different things like that. And our medical team did a fantastic job this year. I believe I see Dr. Neal back. If you want, would you lift your hand or stand or something? That's Dr. Neal right there. He has led our medical team, and he's quiet. He's behind the scenes throughout the year. Purchasing medication, getting it donated, discounts, whatever he can do all year. And you remember a couple months ago, I guess it was, we were saying, help us pack, meds and meet us at the outreach center, and we're going to be doing some packing of pills and different things like that. We packed about 250,000 pills. We realize that's about 250,000 pills. And by Wednesday of that week, we were running low on some meds, if you can imagine, okay? And it's just unbelievable. And Shannon mentioned a moment ago, I think one day, we had about 670 people came to the clinic in one day. Now, if you work in any kind of doctor's office, if you are a physician or a nurse, can you imagine running 670 people through your office in one day, okay? This was efficient. I just was blown away by what they've been able to do. So just incredible. We could stay here obviously a long time, but we just want to take a service out, just pause everything else and say, look at what the church is doing, not the church, not Forest Park, the church, capital C, the church is doing around the world. Look what Christ is doing through his body around the world, and we are a small part of that, just a small part, but an important part, and you get to be a part of that. Say, well, Scott, there's no way I could go. Physically I can't go, or it could be family or job related. You know what? I get it. And it is very possible that you literally cannot go. But we've had so many people behind the scenes who give to it, who help, who come up and say, listen, there's no way I can go, but would you take these couple $100s and apply it to someone else's ticket, or will you help here, or can I do this? Can I come pack pills? Can I make donations? Can I this? Absolutely. You are just as much a part of the team if you give to it, if you help pack, if you help get things ready, okay? You won't hear anything else about this, about our outreach teams, until we get a little first of the year. We'll make a big deal of it again and get everybody on board who wants to go. But we wanted to take today and say, hey, thank you, and watch what God's doing. Now, we have a short video. It's less than 10 minutes. I want you to watch this. I'm going to come back at the end, pray, and we're going to be dismissed, okay?
now that I know you're never gonna leave me, I can be sure. I know that you see me wherever I go. No matter the road, holding the hope, never gonna stop. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Hands up, love is reaching out to you. Rise up, let the spirit make you move. Light up, feel your grace light up the room. Caught up, yeah. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Everyone joining the rhythm of love. Wherever we run, we move to the beat of our song. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. Caught up in the rhythm of your love, caught up in the rhythm. When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain is all I know, oh, I won't be shaken. No, I won't be shaken. 'Cause my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh, shame no longer has a place to hide. And I am not a captive to the lies. Oh, I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Oh, I won't be shaken. No, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. And there's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. Come on, sing that again. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh, come on, sing it out. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh,